That tall, gangly thing?
Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by someone who is considered by many to be the heart, the soul, the brains behind so much of competitive TFT. Today I'm joined by Rissakah, the project manager at Wisdom and Giant Slayer TV. Rissakah, thank you so much for being here with me today.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So before we start, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am the project manager of Wisdom and also known as Giant Slayer TFT. I know that one of the first questions you mentioned was just what is Wisdom or what is Giant Slayer? And I feel like that's just a big representation of who I am. So, and there's a lot of confusion on this one. Wisdom is actually the big company, and that is where I am actually from. So Giant Slayer is not the company name, it's the brand underneath Giant Slayer. And what we do is we produce a lot of mix of in-houses, white label, esports marketing for a lot of different games. There's League of Legends, Valorant, Heroes of Storm. There's so many games that even I honestly might not know all our brands. But for me, I am in charge of Giant Slayer TFT specifically.
So many people know you as the tournament organizer behind so many Giant Slayer events. Can you tell us a little bit about what the journey looked like for you to actually become that?
Yeah, so it was a really weird journey for sure. Where a year ago, I was a little over a year. It's like a year and a half now at this point. COVID makes me forget time. But a year and a half ago, I was in Twitch Rivals in San Diego, and TFT was really the first game that I was really great at. There was auto chess before that, but every other game I'm like gold level, like nothing amazing, you're average player. But auto chess and then TFT was when I was like, all right, I'm actually like challenger level or like at least top percentage where I can be proud of. And that's when I entered the tournament scene and did decently well at Twitch Rivals and made some connections. And then from there on, there was different company that reached out to me to help them make content and to give my insight as a high level player. And eventually, Wisdom recruited me and was just like, hey, like we're thinking of starting a brand, like not sure what it's even called yet, but we want it to be TFT themed. Would you like to come help out? And so I was essentially a content creator for Wisdom, but then I helped create the brand of Giant Slayer. And then eventually that role just grew to be tournament organizer, caster, and then the final title of just project manager of Giant Slayer now.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear just, how that journey goes from you being a competitor who originally was just like a gamer like anyone else, and then that turns into some sort of expansive role where suddenly you're doing so many different things in this company. Have you always wanted to work in esports?
Thing is that it's like a dream that I didn't know that could come true because it's just so far away from like I always loved video games as a kid, and once in a while I watched like a League of Legends tournament, but I was never that into the scenes where I was just like, I'm gonna become a tournament organizer for this, or I'm gonna somehow get into esports scene. I was doing your basic business backgrounds. I was a coder in college, so my majors were actually human resource and then business analytics and information technology. So nothing regarding esports at all. And once I graduated from college, I went for a HR path as an analyst. And so I my experience for esports is actually extremely new. Like since Giant Slayer, sorry, that was my beginning of esports or where my knowledge really came in. Um, but I would say that even though it wasn't a dream that I had since I was a kid, it feels like a dream now. Like I've never imagined that I could do something I love and be so happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's everyone's, ultimate goal to be able to do whatever it is that they love every day, and it's really cool to hear how it's like it was a dream you didn't even know you had, right? And it just fell into your lap, and you took advantage of it, and it turned into something that you love so much. Let's move on to kind of like the nitty gritty of competitive TFT. That's what so many people know you for, and I really want to hear your thoughts on a lot of things in that space. So one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about is that people debate whether TFT can succeed, at a competitive level as an esport. For TFT to actually become a successful esport, what do you feel like it actually needs?
So there's a couple things, but I would say that the number one biggest one would be spectator mode. Um, I think that I've gotten a lot of other tournament organizers like email me saying like, hey, like I would love to make a tournament of sort, but how do you guys do it? Like I don't understand how without spectator mode, how do you even make a broadcast? And so I've been like giving them like hints of like, hey, like you should do this or that. But all in all, like it is very difficult without it. And there is a little bit of a barrier because you do have to stream in order to be able to show up on broadcast. And a lot of the tournament players obviously may not have the setup to stream or may not be comfortable streaming, and that stops them from entering the scene as they normally would like to. However, I will strongly disagree with the statement when people say that the competitive esport of TFT is just non-existent or cannot happen. If you think about it, this game is still very new. Like, sure, set one, set two, we didn't have anything, but that was like literally the game said beta on it, right? Like, there's not a lot that you could do in a complete beta mode where they're still testing out a lot of stuff. And to this day, things are still being experimented. But the speed of growth is actually more than you expect because set three, we got a world championship. And then set four, we end up having a lot more qualifiers under it, along with even mini qualifiers under that one. A little confusing on name and definitely still in the experimental stages. But all in all, I think that there has been a improvement from every single set. And with the launch of spectator mode in the future, I feel like that would really solidify everything else like altogether.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of criticism, like you mentioned, in set two and set three. Set two really didn't have much of a competitive scene at all, besides like the send-off tournament. Set three obviously had the World Championships, but apart from that, some of the qualifiers were a little shaky. People, criticized the visibility of a lot of the events. But like you're saying, set four had the open bracket qualifiers that so many people entered. We had a ton of players come out to those, having the open bracket feed into the actual regional qualifiers. So it sounds like there's a lot going on behind the scenes. We even saw Giant Slayer partner with Riot. Are there more things happening on the back end, whether you can talk about them or not, that are looking hopeful for the future of TFT?
I definitely can't talk about specifics. However, we were very fortunate to be able to partner with Riot during the majority of set four, and things are being worked on. And I, for one, am just excited to see what there is to come for the future of TFT.
Yeah, I mean, they've already announced spectator mode coming out in set five, so hopefully that comes sooner than later. I know right now they've kind of said they're hoping for the end of set five. Hopefully that's maybe expedited, comes out a little early. Hopefully,
fingers crossed.
yeah, fingers crossed. So let's talk a little bit about your favorite memories of tournaments past.
Oh, favorite memories. I think I won't lie. It has to go from like the beginning of the journey. It was the set two finale. At that point was when Giant Slayer was still starting up, and no one really knew who we were. And me just sneaking into the lobby to Discord, I was like really nervous, saying like I don't know any of these people, and I'm really introverted too, so I don't want to just be like, "Yo, come to my party," or I mean tournament. like it's just like completely random. I'm like I'm a nobody. I don't know these people. Like it was really scary, but once I got this tournament set up with like a proper prize pool, a proper format, players were really excited about it. And it was to a point where they would record videos for us. So one of the projects I worked on for Set 2 Finale was a promo video where players talked about their feelings of Set 2. Granted, they were not the best opinions, but the fact that I got majority of players to be able to respond to that and then join the tournament and just have a blast is like one of the first big event that we did as Giant Slayer left a big impression to me. And even to this day, it always makes me happy of how eager everyone is willing to compete and how much they're willing to like banter back and forth with me. I mean, granted, some of them are like, Risa, I don't want to read. Like that's the most common comment I get. But at the same time, it's a very close knitted community, and I'm glad that players were very open-minded in accepting Giant Slayer as a whole brand, accepting me as a tournament organizer, and always relaying feedback to me. Majority of competitive scene or everything that Giant Slayer has built was largely due to the players, like points, format, every one of these things. After a big tournament, I usually sit in a call with them, and I'm just like, what went wrong? What went great? Let me know. And then there's like a giant debate that goes on, and those debates, I really enjoy them. They're like not quite a formal meeting, and sometimes it does get a little like ranty with just the same point. However, I still really respect the fact that we're all coming together to help build and grow the scene.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of, a grassroots effort. I come from the Melee scene where everything is completely grassroots, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like there's a lot of similarities. The words you're using of like the eagerness of the players, the tight knit nature of it. Would you say that you would rather, or let me rephrase, would you prefer to work in a large tier one esport like League of Legends or something like that versus like the grassroots smaller nature of TFT?
That's hard to comment because we're actually partnered with League of Legends now too. And both projects are so exciting. Like there's a part of me that can never let go of TFT, right? But I won't mind that there's also the aspect of when these other projects come in, I'm just like, what can I do to help? So I think it's a two completely different setup. I always do enjoy the close-knit community because I could go to the players and be like, what do you want the most? Versus sometimes when it's such a large scene as such, it's harder to develop that connection because League of Legends is such a saturated market, right? But even then, like you can make something work. Like there is the community there. You just have to look more towards it. And we do have a great project manager who has been doing that. I don't know. I think it's hard to just compare graphs because TFT is just I'm so biased towards it being one of my favorite games as well that if I ignore TFT completely and just say grassroots or a big game though, I think I might lean towards big game if it was not TFT.
I think that's fair. We've seen Giant Slayer do a lot this past year. One of the things that was really exciting in Set Four was that you guys began to experiment with different formats, different competitive formats in TFT. We saw 2v2v2v2. We saw 4v4. Do you think there are any tournament formats that you feel haven't been explored well enough yet?
I mean, honestly, the entirety of TFT to a certain degree, every single tournament we have is experimental to a degree. Like there is no 8 teams in one game. If you think about it, it's like 8 players against each other, a very unique point system, and everything was just being created from scratch at the end of set two. And so there's obviously going to be parts of it that's not perfect. So even the solo version, I feel like is still very experimental because there's the idea of the more games you have, the better the tournament because there's less variables and there's more results and sample size to go from. However, at the same time, it's not a great tournament if you have a player play 20 games in one day and they're just like, please let me just go home. So I think if there's still that balance. Luckily the feedback that I've gotten for all of the stuff for qualifiers so far has been very positive. And they have mentioned that they enjoy that greatly. And obviously, like duo and 4v sports are a lot of fun, and a lot of them are saying like that's the future of TFT. But at the same time, there is no actual mode of team going out yet. I think honestly, people are loving because it's something new. I feel like if they actually came out with a team mode, it'll be fun for a bit, and then they're like, you know what? No, solo was the best anyway. So we're not. I'm not positive. Everything is still experimental for me. Definitely team tournaments there's not even mode for it yet. So that one is just 100% not even in the discussion to really say it's still experimental versus the solo version. I still think that there's tests to be run to see what is the most enjoyable experience for the players.
Yeah, and I think in the future we'll also see how those modes stack up for like the viewers of a competitive, in tournament as well. Some viewers may prefer solo versus watching a team
Mm-hmm.
compete. So in the next few months, we have a couple things coming up. We still have the rest of the NA qualifiers. We have Worlds. So what are the things that you are most excited about coming up in the competitive TFT scene?
Honestly, the talents just got announced, so really good timing for this interview, or else I would not have been able to talk about this. I'm super excited to see Esports Law, Wolfie, and then Froden to be on the casting desk, and along in the future potentially different talents. Who knows? But I think that even just the broadcast version of TFT is a very new setup where the cast is what really gives life to a broadcast a lot of times. So the format is your standard, and I think that it's going to be a lot of fun because you do get the top 4 players that are guaranteed to get a spot in the regional finals, and then there is 4 guaranteed spots, woohoo, 4 spots for NA, going into the World Championship. So I think there's definitely these tournaments by itself is already heavily more weighted, and there's going to be a lot of excitement to see who's going to go from the top straight to the next big event. And again, repeating that the cast is something that I'm looking forward to with fresh faces to see.
Yep, there's definitely a lot of excitement, and a lot on the line in these next couple events. So it's cool to see such a stacked broadcast team behind it. So that's just about all I have. I did want to ask one more thing. We talked a little bit about your professional career, your journey up to this point. So I did want to ask what advice you would have for someone who wants to work in esports, maybe isn't exactly sure how their skill set can fit. What advice would you give to someone who wants to long-term work in esports?
I would say action over words. If you are reaching out that you want to be part of the esports scene, even if you don't have any experience whatsoever, right? Show us what you can do. Don't simply be like, hey, I can work this. How can you work this? That's such a common question that I get for any role, be it casters, a admin, anything along those lines. They'll send me an inquiry, like for example, casting. They'll say that I want to cast for you. I'm good at it. Where are your videos? And sometimes they're like, oh, I don't have videos yet, but I feel like since I'm such a high level player, I'll be good. Well, then go record yourself on OBS for like one, not even the entire game, just parts of the game, and just show me your excitement, how you can contribute. And I'd be more than happy to like view you as such. So I say that for esports is always a weird scene. And obviously, I'm new to it too, so my advice may not be the best. But I definitely do think that for any job out there, always show them what you can do and not simply say that you deserve it or that you should have it.
Definitely agree. It's always important to show what you're actually capable of. Before we head out, is there anything that you'd like to shout out?
My Twitter's it's Rissakah if you want to see a mixture of cats, and then my tournament updates, and then obviously the brand Giant Slayer TFT. Go check it out, and there's also Wisdom that shows all our brands.
Risa, thank you so much for joining me in this interview. It was really It was a pleasure to talk to you. For more TFT content, make sure you guys like and subscribe, and be on the lookout for more TFT interviews in the future.